more than you forgot, but the problem is I forgot. Now, I'm just hoping that I can remember what I was going to be talking about today. But you all have a questionnaire that says your lesson at the top, and I'm going to explain that, how we got that. What happened in 1980, I was hired to set up a golf academy at the Hills of Lakeway in Austin, Texas. And so this was a phenomenal facility. It had a par 4, par 3, par 5 holes to practice on. We had 3 pins on each green on those holes. We had covered hitting, which was unheard of back then. We had bent grass, Bermuda grass, short game areas. It was a phenomenal facility, and so I wanted to make the programs that we used to match the facility. So I wanted the best programs. And so what I did is I hired an advisory board of people. And one of them we hired was Ralph Mann of CompuSport, who was a biomechanical engineer. And Ralph just passed away last month. It was sort of a sad deal. He was an Olympic medalist, hurdler, silver medalist. And so he was always in good health, but I think cancer got him. But anyway, then I hired Al Vermeil, who was the strength coach for the 49ers for our fitness that we were doing. Then I hired Dave Pels to do our short game. David lived in town then and was able to do our short game. And then the one guy I invited to teach us how to teach was a psychologist, Dr. Richard Koop. And with Dick, it was hard to find a psychologist back then. I mean, none of the pros were using them. Nobody was getting involved with psychological concepts at all. And I saw they had a book written by Dr. Koop and Gary Wiren called The New Golf Mind. And I said, okay, well, here's a guy that's involved with psychology, so I'll see if he'll come teach us how to teach. And Dick was an educational psychologist at the University of North Carolina. And so he came, and the concept of their book that they wrote, The New Golf Mind, was the pros and cons of right brain versus left brain thinking in golf. And so he explained to me, you know, what was the advantages to being a field learner versus what were the advantages to being an analytical learner, and what were the drawbacks, and so on and so forth. So it was a big point. And so what we did is we developed that questionnaire that you have called Your Lesson, and Dick said, you know, you want to fill this out every lesson for a year. And that's what I did. And so when I had my clipboard and I'd fill it out, did every one. And so I developed where it's just natural for me to do the right things when it comes to proceeding with a lesson, if you will. And so before you have your lesson, these are the things that you want to determine before you start teaching. One is the learning style. So this is right brain versus left brain. And Dick always said, be the student. And I had so much success being able to teach differently to field players as I did to analytical players. It was probably the biggest gain I ever made in my instruction, was learning to do that. And so we had, Dick said, you know, I said, well, how can you tell whether one is analytical or not? He said, well, there are all sorts of clues, how they dress, how they talk, how they act, and so on and so forth. And he said, but you teach them differently. And so it gave me the opportunity to teach Tom Kite and Payne Stewart at the same time. Tom was the most analytical guy I've ever taught, and Payne Stewart was the least analytical guy I ever taught. So when I was working with Tom, we would film every swing, and then we'd go back and look at every frame that we filmed, and this was constant. Tom was always, field players analytical players are always trying to control things. In other words, they're trying to keep things in a box, keep some structure going around what they're doing. Consequently, they're very, very consistent. They don't get too far off, but because they're fenced in with their structure, is that they don't run the tables very often. And so if you saw Tom Kite, you know, he was he was probably the most consistent golfer of all time, because he was so much with this analytical concept of how to play golf. And then Payne Stewart was just the opposite. Payne had no structure. When I worked with him, I never ever, in 12 years, never showed him his golf swing on video one time. So we would work on, if he's hitting it, if he's hooking it too much, we'd go have slice contest. He had no concept of golf course strategy. And so we'd sit down and go over this is how you play a golf course. Had a big effect on his winning the U.S. Open at Pinehurst, was some of the work that we did on golf course strategy, pre-swing routine. We worked with him a lot on his pre-swing routine in order to give him some structure. And so that was a big part. I got into it so much that what I used to do was I used to schedule my field players on one day, and I would schedule my analytical players on the other day. So they'd have field players one day, analytical players next. I would dress differently. The analytical player day, I would have gray slacks, white shirt, black shine shoes, white cap. When I had my field players in there, I would have a pink shirt, unbuttoned down, 4 buttons, gold chain, give me 5, what's happening, baby? I mean, really. I mean, this is not an exaggeration. So it was a big part of doing that. And this lasted. You're working with all sorts of different players. And so then the next thing you want to determine before the lesson is the learning stage. And it was interesting. EA was talking about Timothy Galloway. When I came back from Vietnam, I wanted to go learn something new and different. I went to the Esalen Institute out in Big Sur, and Timothy was there at the time. And Tim had written the book, The Inner Game of Tennis, and he was involved with writing the book, The Inner Game of Golf. And one of the things that he posted out there, one of the things that he and I talked about at the time that he put in his book, The Inner Game of Golf, was that all players are in learning stages. And what happens is, if you try to give them information that doesn't solve the problem for the learning stage they're in, they won't do it. In other words, so like the learning stages are contact, making contact with the ball. That's first stage. If you have a beginning golfer, getting it in the air would be the second thing. Then Timothy found that distance was more important than direction first, because you mess up direction trying to get distance, then direction, and then finally orthodoxy. So if you've got a beginning golfer, you're trying to get them to flex their lead wrist on the downswing and shallow the club, and they keep whiffing it, they're not going to keep trying to work on that. And so you have to work on them in the areas that match their stage. So contact with beginning golfers, I'd always start at the hole and move back, because they can hit the ball in with a putter for sure, and then go back and then learn to chip it, and you learn what gets it in the air. Then the next stage, getting it in the airborne, I might put them on a high tee, put the ball on a high tee, get their feet real close together so their center doesn't get too far off and they can make contact with the ball. And if they can knock the tee out, they can get it in the air. And then producing distance, well, maybe they don't have necessarily a lot of speed or whatever. Well, I might crank the grip over, get it real strong, get them in to out, get them hooking it, get the ball rolling somewhere. be getting distance before direction, and then start trying to shape the direction. And the last thing would be to make it more efficient or make it more orthodox. But you have to be teaching them in the stage in which they're in at that particular time. The other thing that you want to determine is, does their equipment fit them? And I'll tell you a story about that later on. Next thing, you want to look at their physical ability. Do they have restrictions that you can see or tell? What are they? Maybe endurance, and this would be anaerobic endurance, not aerobic endurance, but anaerobic endurance is how long can they practice. You see a guy hit. I've got a guy now that's got Parkinson, and he hits a few balls and then he's got to stop. He has no endurance whatsoever. Stability, being able to maintain your tilts and your turns as you're making your swings. Mobility, the freedom to move. Do they have any limitations there? Strength. We've just had a long presentation on grip strength and other types of strength, and speed. And so you're looking at these different things and you're seeing what can they do, what can't they do. Next thing you want to know is, what are their goals? That's what you should be trying to teach. People say, how do you determine success as a teacher? Well, you determine that by if your students reach their goals. If they reach their goals, then you've been a successful teacher. If they don't, there's a lot to goal setting. It has to be realistic, but if you do, it's a very, very powerful motivational tool. How much time do they have? How much time do you have to play and practice? The arena, where are they going to be playing? Are they a tour player? Are they a college player? Are they a high school player? Are they a ladies 9-hole player? Is she trying to just be a better player to play with her friends and then the ladies 9-hole group? What's their arena? That's a very important question that you need to know. And then finally, what are the technique issues that they have that are keeping them back? That's sort of the last thing that you look at. So let's just talk about those are the things you're trying to determine. Let's talk about, what do you look at when you first meet a student, what's coming up. One is how they dress. As Dick Coop said, he said, you can tell learning styles by how they dress and how they talk, how they act, so forth. So Dick Coop said observing how they dress is really important. We've already alluded to that a little bit, pink shirt, gold chain, etc. Next is whether it's a man or a woman, boy or girl. There are obviously differences with that. How they talk. And I'm going to be telling some stories about each one of these as we go. What's their personality? Are they introverts, extroverts? These are things that you want to observe while you're watching them. Next is their equipment. And when you're looking at their equipment, if you look down at their driver and you see a bunch of idiot marks on top of the club, you see a wear spot right on top of the grip, they're probably over-the-top slicers, weak grippers, or whatever. If you see one iron with a little tiny spot in the sweet spot, you go, the guy's probably pretty good. But you want to look at their equipment. I mean, they have a bunch of head covers. That'll give you some clues.
Yeah, please back to
with what you're going to be doing. And then their physical appearance. I mean, what do they look like? They heavy. How do they move? They move slow. They move fast. They have good posture? Are they rounded posture? The physical appearance tells them a lot. So anyway, so first of all, if you see somebody dressed conservatively, normally they're more analytical. If you see somebody dressed creatively, normally they're a little more intuitive. So I'll tell you a story about that. Alan Hottie was kind enough to ask me to be his vice captain for the Levy Cup team that we had, Levy Cup team that we had earlier this past year. And so I didn't know a lot of the players because I wasn't playing tournaments at the same level they were playing, and I didn't know who they were. But anyway, so I see Sean Mullen, okay. So I see Sean out there, and he's got bright blue Jordan high tops. He's got joggers on. He's got a muscle shirt, and he's got tattoos. I'm going, that guy's creative. And so I've got a feeling that when I watch this guy's going to be a field player. And then there's Greg Hillers on the same team. I look at Greg, and he looks like a one-day-old bruise. He's got khaki slacks, a white shirt. What kind of shoes do you have?
Well,
Yeah. And so, I'm looking at him going, yeah, and it's amazing how they play that way. Like Sean's very, very aggressive, long hitter. He takes the tight lines. When I was watching him play, we were talking about laying up on a hole, and he laid up with his driver. Then Greg Hiller he's the Scott Fawcett model. If the pin's on the right and there's trouble to the right, he's 20 feet left. If the pin's on the left and the trouble to the left, he's 20 feet right. But I mean, he is straight, and he hits it really, really straight. Very consistent, hits a lot of fairways, a lot of greens. But that's just an example of how if you have those two guys, you got to teach them differently. And so, for instance, with Tom Kite, we had Bob Rotella in one time to work with Tom. And Tom always wanted to keep everything boxed in or controlled. And so you'll like this, EA. So what Rotella said was, he said, well, Tom, what are you afraid of? He says, well, this was when Tom was hanging left, legs working out from underneath him, big reverse C, big in to out, hit up on the ball a lot. And he said, I just hate that block to the right. I just hate that block to the right. He said, is that a bad shot? He said, yeah, that's a terrible shot. And he said, well, what if you just aim left and hit it? He said, well, why would I do that? He said, well, because it looks like that's what you do all the time. So why don't you just aim for it and just do it? He said, so we're going to go play the Hills of Lakeway, and you're going to aim left and hit a block on every tee shot. Tom shot 64.
but
For him, it never entered his mind that was a possibility. Payne Stewart was ADD, and so difficult shots turned him on. Difficult tournaments turned him on. He would really try hard at that, but easy shots, he was terrible. He was terrible at a chip and run from just off the edge of the green. He was terrible at short putts. He just never gave them the attention they would deserve because they didn't interest him. And so we had to develop games for him to play. So like a chipping drill, I put a towel on the green, wet it, and said, you got to land it on the towel, make it finish within a club length of the hole. And you got to do it 7 out of 9 times. And so it was a game to him. Okay, all right. Oh, okay, I only got 6 that time. Okay, I'm going to get 7 this time, this, that, and the other, until finally he started practicing. He became really good at that. Short putts, the clock drill, uphill, downhill, right to left, left to right, 3-foot, 4-footer, 5-footer. We would do that every time that I worked with him. Then we started expanding that, going 4, 5, and 6, then expanding that 5, 6, and 7, and to where he was working on short putts. And I wasn't giving him any putting advice, but I was just trying to find ways to motivate him to practice based on his learning style. When you're teaching men and women, you have to understand that they're built differently in a couple of different ways. One is if a woman and a man worked out the same, a good athlete, let's say, worked out the same, a woman could get about 90% as strong as a man in her lower body, but only about 50% as strong in the upper body, and because of hormonal differences. And so you have to build a golf swing for women that's built around strength coming from the lower body. So the lower body having more motion, more drive, etc., tends to get your tilts this way to where your swing is going to be more in to out. And so you have to give them a way to play swinging to the right. Most of your LPGA players swing to the right. And so you have to give them a stronger grip, or you have to give them a more closed position at the top, so that when their lower body runs, they can still get the face squared up with that. The other thing about ladies, there was a lady named Rita Roby that I was taught that drove me crazy, absolutely drove me nuts. And so Rita, when I would say something, I'd say, Rita, so here's what I want you to do. When you come back, I want you to feel like you turn your weight to your right heel. Okay. Did you feel that? Could you feel that when you turn? Well, you know, I noticed that my left knee went funny over here like this. Well, did you feel your weight get to your right heel? Well, I don't know about that because I was worried about my knee going funny. Okay, well, let's try it again. This time I want you to really focus and concentrate. Okay, turn to the right heel. Did you feel that when you turned to the right heel that time? Yeah, but you know, my toes on my right foot came up, and it, you know, so she drove me crazy. It's absolutely stark raving mad. And so I asked Coop about it. I said, well, what's going on? You know, why can't she focus on what I'm telling her? He says, well, women and men their brains are different. That the fibers that connect the two hemispheres, the right brain and the left brain, women have twice as many as men. And so their ability is to go back and forth, to multitask, if you will, is much, much greater than a man. A man would tend to get in one hemisphere and stay there, to be more focused. And so he said, what you have to do is just be patient. You have to wait. They will eventually relate to what you're talking about, but you have to just keep saying it over and over again. And so that freed me up. I didn't hate Rita Roby anymore. I gave her a couple more lessons, and sure enough, she eventually started going. The style in which women like to be taught, this is studied with some psychological stuff Dick said, is that they like to be shown how to do things. Show me is their telltale sign. Men with stronger upper bodies, what you'll see that picture of Brooks Koepka over there, is they can get more stacked up, more on top of the ball. That's why they can hit fades and so forth, because their upper body is equally as strong as their lower body. And so you can play more that way. If you look at Wyndham Clark and you look at some other guys, Koepka and some of the other guys, you can see how stacked up they are over their lower bodies instead of being in behind their lower bodies. And then for most men, the way they like to be taught is to be told what to do. Just tell me what you want me to do and I'll do it. And so I think those are important things. Speech, how they talk sort of tells you how they learn. So if you look at Nick Faldo there on the right, Nick Faldo is, now what I'm trying to do is to keep my right knee in place until impact while I cover the ball with my chest. Okay, that's a typical Nick Faldo comment about how he was making his swing. Dustin Johnson on the other side, I'll tell you a story. This was at the 72nd hole at Chambers Bay, the U.S. Open, and I was there walking around watching. I'm right there by the tee listening to him. And I don't know if you remember, but during that week, the second hole and the 18th hole were swapped each day for a par 4 and a par 5. So one day the second hole was par 4, and the next day it was a par 5. And then the 18th hole was the same thing. One day it was par 4, and the next day it was par 5. And so I'm over there listening to it, and that day on Sunday they had decided to make the 18th hole a par 5. It had been a par 5 the day before. Okay, so so anyway, so Dustin's there with his brother, who's his caddy, Austin, and he says, "Hey, bro," he says, "that this MF, par 4 or par 5? I don't know, bro. It was par 5 yesterday. I guess it's par 4 today, but I don't know. I couldn't tell you whether it was par 4 or par 5. Well, bro, I gotta know. I gotta make a birdie. I'm one shot back." And he said, "Well, bro, you better make a 3 then, because we don't know whether it's par 4 or par 5.
Just
So that's my point about not being the best at structure. And so I don't know if you remember, though, he killed this drive and hit it in the smallest area on the hole. Just drove the ass off this thing. And then the flag's back left, and he flies it right over the flag, right to the back edge of the green. So now he's there in 2, and it's a par 5. But he doesn't know. He thinks it's a par 4. And so he charges that putt, and he charges that putt and 3-putts it to lose by 1. But that was, so you could tell. You'd be teaching Dustin Johnson and Nick Faldo quite a bit differently, I would say. Introverts, extroverts. This was really interesting. Dick and I did a study one time where we asked the tour players that won tournaments that year. We asked every tour player that won a tournament that year, what were your swing thoughts for the week? And so we're expecting, be the ball, ball to target, think only of the target, and so forth. But what we found was that the players matched their personality with their swing thoughts, or their swing thoughts matched their personality. So what happened is that extroverted people, outgoing people, thought about something outside their body. So they would either think about the target, or they would think about the ball flight to the target. Okay, I'm going to hit a fade to the target. I'm going to knock this down to the target. But they were thinking about something outside of themselves. The introverted ones, Kite and Faldo, guys like that, were thinking about what they were doing. So Kite was always, okay, I'm going to lay it off and swing left. And so that he was thinking about what he was doing with the club. Faldo, as I said, was trying to keep his right knee in place until impact. He used to have Fanny hold that knee like that. And so that changed my teaching a bunch, because now that gave me license to give analytical cueing for tournament golf to analytical players. In other words, not trying to get them to, well, you shouldn't be thinking any mechanics. You should be all thinking of just the target and just the flight of the ball or whatever. We found out that was farthest that it could be from the truth. It just wasn't true. They thought their thoughts matched their personalities. And then equipment. This is a story. Harvey Pinnock, I asked him for a lesson one time, and this was back in the Woodwood days, and it was a cold day. And I said, "Mr. Pinnock," I said, "I'm duck hooking my driver. Can you watch me hit some? Give me a couple of tips." And he said, "Well, it's pretty chilly out there." I said, "Yes, sir, it is." And so I had this beautiful Tommy Armour driver, had the perfect grain, little horseshoe grain all the way around. This thing was the prettiest thing, had a aluminum insert, and this thing was the most beautiful driver I've ever had that wouldn't hit at all. It was the worst hitting son of a bitch that I've ever owned. Okay, and so it didn't have much loft, and so Harvey says, "Well, bring in your driver, bring in your submarine. Let me take a look." So he comes in, sets it down. He sees it doesn't have any loft, so he turns it over, looks at the sole plate. He notices that all of the T marks are on the back of the sole plate. He looks at the grip. He can see all my wear marks. My thumb is on top of the grip, so I had a weak grip. And he says, "Well, I don't need to go out there in this cold." He said, "I just want you to get a driver with more loft, get your submarine, make it more up, get your irons and make them more upright." And he said, "I want you to give me 3 knuckles and then just be like dumb old Harvey and go ahead and hit it." And so Davis Love Jr., Davis Love III's father, was there with me at the time. He used to go to college there. It wasn't while he was in college, but he was there. And we were walking out to the range, and I told Davis, I said, "Harvey's lost it." I said, "I'm duck hooking my driver, and he's telling me to get my clubs more upright and get a stronger grip and just be dumb and go ahead and hit it." He says, "Well, he's never wrong." And I said, "Well, okay, I'll give it a try." So the first couple I buried in the ground. I sniped him so bad. And then all of a sudden, I started hitting it great. And I kept hitting it great, kept hitting it great. Well, what had happened was, this with this new driver with more loft, is that I wasn't hanging back with the other driver. I would hang back trying to get it in the air and then flip it. And I ended up hitting these big old topspin duck hooks. And so once I got enough loft, and a strong enough grip, then that made me want to get up to the ball to where I was able to catch the ball, create the right type of spin, and not hook it anymore. But I mean, that's the genius of Harvey, but also that's why looking at equipment can really give you a lot of clues when you're teaching. And then physical appearance, obviously. This is Dylan Fratelli on the left, working out like a maniac. And then that's Lumpy Heron on the right. And so you see guys like that. You see somebody heavy set or doesn't look like they move very well. I mean, you can do all sorts of things. You can increase their hip turn. You can bend their left arm. You can close their stance. You can do all sorts of things to help overcome the physical limitations they might have to play well. And then somebody with this got everything, you can do a little bit more, making their swing as more neutral, so they can play in a bigger arena. And so that's important. Then the interview, the name, that yeah, for obvious reasons you want to know what to call them. But we had this one guy came in. His name was Jacob, and he came in, and I've been known to have a body joke or two, or this, that, and the other. And after I got to knew the guy a little bit, I told a little off-color joke, I think. And then he didn't laugh, or he didn't smile. I realized that he was from a very religious family, that Jacob's a very religious name. And if I had just caught that clue, I would have realized, well, there's that possibility. And so you shouldn't be telling off-color jokes to religious people. And so that was one. The address and phone number. The address is important because if it's not a member at your club, but if it's just you have a student that's coming to you from outside, you don't know if they're in the poor section of town. They might be limited financially to what they can do. Might be limited access to golf facilities and so forth like that. So the address gives you a lot of information. Occupation, we've already talked about it. People that have analytical occupations tend to be more analytical, and people that have more creative occupations tend to be more creative. And so it's again, you're trying to use that to help you determine whether they're what type of learning style. Age, generally older are more analytical just because they've had more education in life, and young people are much more field-oriented, more creative, and you want to keep them that way as long as you can. The kids today that we teach have gotten more analytical just because of the use of iPhones and computers and so on and so forth that they didn't have access to way back when. But generally speaking, you want to teach juniors a lot differently than you teach seniors, that's for sure. Whoops, sorry. Handicap. What's your handicap? That's a question you ask. Well, my handicap's 30. How long have you been playing? 28 years. I'm not a very good student. Okay, so I got that. What's your handicap? My handicap is 6. How long have you been playing? A year. Very good student. So you're just asking these questions. They're all important. So your handicap, how long you've been playing. Then you ask for physical handicaps. What are their, do they have any physical handicaps? So there's 2 reactions to that. If golf is causing them to be injured or to hurt, then you have to work on that first. If it's not golf that's causing them to be injured, then you can have to work around it. And so like you talk Calvin Pete, his arm is fixed. It's that way. So you can't change that. You can't all of a sudden fix his elbow. But you would have to help him be able to find some way to shallow that club out to come into the ball on a reasonable angle. And so you're dealing with 2 different types of physical handicaps. One, the golf swing's causing the problem. One is that they just have the problem, then that you have to work around it. Other sports, what other sports have you played? You can use all sorts of analogies. Tennis player, topspin forehand, trying to hit a draw in golf. They keep the wrist back, swing low to high, and out on tennis. You have hockey. It was an interesting story where at the tournament at Sherwood years ago when Sean Foley was working with Tiger, and Sean had just gotten into trying to get the handle to go in when the head of the club to go out like this. And so he's really hot into working on that with Tiger, and he tells Tiger, yeah, it's just like a slap shot. And Tiger says, I've never played hockey, Sean. So that didn't work. But anyway, he was still able to do that, but that didn't work. But I mean, there's other sports where they tell you, what kind of physical ability they have. And then the use of analogies as well. Other teachers, and we'll talk about that in a minute. What do you think is your strength and your weakness? What's your strongest part? What's your weakest part? Asking that question. What are your goals? We've talked about this before. And how much time do you have to practice and play? Big deal. Determines on the content that you can teach them, but is based upon how much time they have to work on it. So occupation, generally the more education, the more analytical, the more creative the job, the more intuitive. So the guy on the left there is a doctor, very analytical, and he processes things that way. The guy on the right is a marketing director, and so he's involved with shows and things, merchandise show type things where he's trying to display his product, make it, sell it, trying to be as creative as possible to do that. So that's, again, we've gone over that. occupation. Older, that's me, very analytical. And then this is one of my young junior girls, very, very creative. And so very intuitive. And so you're dealing with, and Brex Bradley's a great teacher of juniors, but you're dealing with, when you're working with juniors, mimicking. They like to mimic. It's a lot more than giving them an ABC lesson, but we used to have this one girl that I've got up there right there. She used to have to. She wanted to hook the ball.
That's me.
And that we were trying to get her to hook the ball, and so she was. I said, okay. So we're gonna set up, and you're gonna drop your right shoulder back, and then you're gonna turn and try to get your right side as deep as you can, going back. And then that'll get your club coming from the inside out like that. And so she said, okay. She said, I got it. I played lacrosse. And we used to go back, and when we were going to throw it, we'd go back like this and throw it like that. That's the way we would throw the ball in lacrosse. And so she would have made the interpretation of trying to go from an analytical thought that I was giving her to one that something that she had done in the past. And it was an intuitive reaction to what I was saying. Handicap. Okay, so this tells you what learning stage you're on. The girl on the left there is in the learning stage for distance. You can tell she's got an early release. She's over the top. She can make contact with the ball. She can get it in the air, but she's definitely in the learning stage for distance. So you have to work with her on that. The girl on the right is a girl, Italian girl I taught, Sylvia Cavalieri, who won the British and the U.S. amateurs. Really, really good player. And so you can see her swing has all of what the other lady needs. More from the inside, more lag. She hits it long, and so forth. And so obviously you're teaching them a lot different. One of them is playing the LPGA golf. The other one's playing just comfortable golf along with their girlfriends. So again, handicapped. She's about 24, and then the other girl's a scratch player, obviously. So then experience. This is another one. I love this girl. So how long you've been playing? So the one on the right is Nelly Corda. Her learning stage is orthodoxy. Her arena is the LPGA Tour, and she obviously has a lot of learning ability. So we learn those things. So the one on the left, what do you think about that swing? So that swing's club face is pretty good position. It's pretty deep. Got a good rotation. I think she's got some good turns and tilts in there. But she's got a bent left arm. So she sort of hides it, how good she is. Well, she's a 9 handicap. And she's an Italian lady that plays at Barlacena Country Club. And they have a group of ladies there that every day play golf for €500 per hole. I mean, they aren't messing around. I mean, they're playing €500 a hole every day.
Good up.
And so for her, when I'm working with her, I had a lot more pressure than I would have worked with Nelly Corda, I promise you.
That's just didn't.
I mean, I'm sitting there going, I can't mess her up, It's that I didn't do much with her. I had her hit some punch shots. That's about it. Okay, here's some physical handicaps we're talking about. On the left is Dennis Walters, and Dennis is crippled from the waist down. So he obviously can't shift his weight, can't turn. I mean, he can turn, but he can't shift his weight and so forth. And so he bombs it. He does these clinics and things, and he bombs it. And so if you're working with somebody like that has these limitations, these physical handicaps, so like with him, how does he get his distance? Through lag. I mean, you can see how much that club's loaded right there, ready to come into it. And I mean, he hits bombs, and so you're teaching him. That's what you have to do, is teach him lag. On the right is Calvin Pete, and you can see how his elbow is frozen in that position, and so his club, he stands the club up like this, and so he can't do this, but he can do this. Okay, so when his big deal with him was always to slide his knees forward, get his weight to go forward, and that would reroute his shoulder under more, and so he could hit the ball straight. The guy played the tour for 11 years and hit one ball out of bounds. I mean, a really straight guy. But again, both of those guys have physical handicaps that you have to work around. The golf didn't cause them to have to be injured, but they are, and so you have to work with them going around. Other sports that they played. So we talked about available analogies that you can use with that, and then it also, depending on what sports they played, it gives a clue to their physical ability as well. So if you look at the guy on the left is Graham DeLette, and he played as an amateur hockey player. He played for the Canadian national team. He was a heck of a hockey player, and you know, hockey players are good golfers. That slap shot that Sean was trying to teach, those guys can do it. They were good. Now the guy on the right is probably the world's greatest athlete, if you're just measuring athletics. It's Michael Jordan. But being the world's greatest athlete doesn't mean you'll have the world's greatest golf swing.
Big shot.
There's MJ.
Sweet.
And so I asked him, I said, how did you develop that swing? You go out there. He says, well, all I do is gamble. And he said, that's all I do. And he said, I've got around some of the best gamblers in the world, and they all hit a slice. He said, so I'm hitting a slice. And he said, it's made me a lot of money. And he used to have a very good-looking golf swing, very orthodox golf swing. But he was a little bit wilder than he was with this swing. So anyway, knowing other sports that they played is important. Other teachers, okay? So on the left is Matt Kuchar working with Chris O'Connell, Jim Hardy devotee. And, you know, we used to, when I played sectional tournaments, they always thought it was cool. They'd pair me and Jim Hardy and Marty Fleckman together. And all we'd do is talk golf the whole time. And so I remember when Jim came up with his one-plane stuff, he was talking about it. He said, yeah, he said, I really like the club deep. And I said, oh, I do too. And he said, yeah, I want you to get that right elbow as far behind your body as you can like that. And I said, well, I don't like that. I said, I like the arm staying in front and getting the shoulder to pull the club deep like that. And they said, well, so how do you get it back from there? He says, well, you kick it out and around, and you go around your body like that. So Marty was a Jim Hardy devotee as well. So we'd go play, and Marty'd hit it to the right, and I'd say, Marty, why'd you hit that to the right? He said, well, I didn't get my elbow kicked out soon enough. And I asked Jim, why'd you hit that left? Well, I didn't get my elbow deep enough on that one, you know. So, but that's the way we would talk. So you can see that with Matt Kuchar there, how it's getting that arm around him. And then this was Tiger working with Hank Haney, and Hank Haney wanted the club out and then around. And so you can see the difference there. So if you're teaching one of those guys, you need to know what their concepts are. What are they? What are they? What do they think is right or wrong as far as their golf swing goes, like that? And so that's, I know a lot of what the other teachers in the section teach, which a lot of you teach. And so if one of your students comes to me, then I have an idea about what's in your mind and what I need to work with or work around. Goal setting. So this is Corey Pavin. This is the way I do goal setting. So he came to me and I said, the goal setting is you set long-term goals, then short-term goals, how far along you would expect to get in a 1-year time, what skills you need to improve the most to reach those goals, and then what is the techniques what part of your technique do you have to improve to reach that, to do those skills to reach those goals. So Corey Pavin came to me in '95 in the off season after '94, I guess. And he said, I want to win a major. And I know your players have won majors. And so he said, I said, okay, so how far do you think you can, how long do you think it'll take you? He said, well, I think I can do it this year. And I said, well, what do you need to do that? And he says, well, I hit it too short and I hit it too low to win a major. He said, I want to hit it high and I want to be able to draw it when I want to. He said, I still want to play my low fade most of the time, but he said, I want to hit it high and draw it when I want to. And I said, well, that's be easy. We'll just change your grip. He said, no, I'm not changing my grip. And then he held it like this. He said, I want to hit a high draw with that grip. And I go, okay, well, got to get the path more to the right, got to get the club face more square somehow. And so you can see the differences. He started on the left, you can see how much the club's laid off and open. And on the right, you can see how much deeper that club is and more on plane, more on line, so that he could hit it from the inside. But if you have the principles to controlling the club face are grip, and then you have to match the wrist action to that grip. And so what happened was, if he's going to use this grip and he's trying to hit a hook, he's got to have to change his wrist action from what he would use when he's hitting his fade. And so we worked a lot on closed stance to get the club deeper like that. And then with the closed stance, his hips would get trapped, allow the club to turn over and pass in front of him a little bit like that. And he ended up winning the U.S. Open that year, '95. So that's sort of how we would we did goal setting with him, and it worked out. And so, okay, these are the things that you want to look at before hitting. One is the ball flight. That's what you're trying to fix. The second thing is I look at the club face position at the top of the swing. So I would call a 45-degree club face position golf square. It's really 90 degrees open. Anything more toe down, open. Anything more toe out, closed. Okay, just as a way to label that. And so I look at the club face position at the top, and if I see it open, something other than square, so let's say I see it open and the face and the ball is going to the right, then I would fix the backswing, because the open club face is what's causing the ball to go to the right. What if I've got an open club face and the ball is going to the left? I can't fix the club face and make it more closed because it'll go way left. So that means I have to work on the downswing first. All right? Second thing is the same thing, closed. Say it's closed, club face is closed and the ball's going to the left, then I would fix the club face on the backswing. If it's closed and the ball's going to the right, then I fix the downswing first. The next thing I want to know, I want to look at the relationship of the club face to the back of the left hand because I want to know why is the club face open or why is the club face closed. So if I have club face open and the wrist cupped, and I know if I want to get it more square, I can get the wrist more bowed or more flexed. If it's club face is open and my wrist is flat, I know it's a grip. So it automatically tells me where to go. Same thing with the closed. If it's closed, my wrist is flat, I know it's a grip. If it's closed, but it's in line with the back of my left hand, I know it's my wrist. Okay, so it tells me what to fix, where to go to fix it automatically. Then I look at the shaft line at the top. So if the club's across the line and the path is to the right, then I'm going to fix the backswing. Because wherever that club points is where it generally swings through. If it's across the line, it swings to the right. If it's laid off, it swings to the left. So if I've got it across the line and I'm 2 in to out, I'm going to fix the backswing first. But like Larry Nelson, I'd get across the line and then go over the top. I can't fix the backswing first. I've got to fix the downswing first. And so then I look at the arm plane at the top. This is real important too. So if I have an upright arm plane, okay, above the shoulder, then 2 things have to happen. One is if I'm especially upright, my shoulder turn has to be flatter. I can't have both things steep. So this is Jim Hardy's 2-plane deal. Upright arms, flat shoulder turn. The other thing is that if I have an upright arm swing, I have to have more lateral motion on the downswing to reconnect. So I've got a longer hip slide, if you will, in order to get the club to reconnect. If I have a flat arm plane, I've got to have a steep shoulder turn in order to get an angle into the ball like that. If I have a flat arm swing, I don't want a lot of lateral motion because I'm already reconnected. I want to have more rotary motion. So if you can, imagine Hogan, flat, more rotation. Nicklaus, upright, more slide, more drive of the legs. And then the next thing I look at is just watch the club go through the ball. That's what the swath means. So I know whether it's swinging to the right or to the left then. Face on, same thing. Want to just watch the blur of the club, see if I'm hitting down, I'm hitting up, I'm sweeping the ball, however I'm hitting it. Then I'll start looking for things that produce distance. And so that, in my mind, there are 3 things that produce speed. One is the length of your swing. The longer the swing, more time you have to accelerate. 2 is your sequence of your swing, a la lag. And then 3rd swing is intention, trying to swing hard, using speed sticks. And so what I want to look at for distance is the amount of motion. So I would use with the driver parallel as neutral, okay? And so I would say he's a short hitter and he's got a short swing. Okay, I can work on lengthening his swing. If he's got a full length to his swing, but he's a short hitter, then I know I have to work on something, either sequence or intention or something else in order to produce the power. And then I have to look at the mix of how do they get that length of swing. So this would be parallel to the ground, but it's a bad mix. It's a lot of arms, a lot of wrists, not much turn. This would be parallel to the ground. A lot of turn, not much arms and wrists. And so whatever you overdo in the backswing, you've got to overdo in the downswing. So a la John Daly arms and wrist. Uses a lot of arms and wrist, very wide coming down. Next is the sequence. I'm looking at the sequence, and so you're looking at you're looking at basically lag here, and so you're seeing guys that have a lot of lag on the downswing, so they're able to produce power. You got guys that are wider, they have to swing harder because they don't have the mechanical advantages of having lag. Then looking at the divot, I'll talk about that in a minute, and then looking at the setup. I'm almost going to make it. Okay, so here's the club face at the top. Looking at the left, you can see is that toe is straight down. That's Webb Simpson. And Webb Simpson has the most open club face on tour. But he hits hooks. So what's he doing? How can he hit a hook with an open face?
Drop that.
Yeah, well, you got wrist action. You got one of 3 different wrist action. You can uncock it, go ulnar with it, or you can flip it, go extend it, or you can roll it. You can go pronated. So you can go in any one of those 3 types of wrist action to match that grip. And so David Duval over here on the left's got the face shut, and he hits fade. So how's he hitting a fade with the shut club face?
Okay.
Yeah, just block. You know, so the wrist action are just the opposite, going that way. So this is, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, and that closes the club face. So anything going the other way, it opens the club face. Okay, so I can get, is that closed or open?
I thought when that burger again opens it.
That's a block, right? Because it's down the line like that. That's a low right club face. That's a block. And I can use that with David Duval's swing because of the club face is close to that position. And a lot of people say that's a closed face, but it's a block, unless you rotate your forearm, especially. But noticing the club face position at the top is a big deal. So here's your wrist position at the top. So right on the left is Tiger with a flat wrist, square club face. On the middle is you got Andrew Landry, got a mega strong grip, got a cupped wrist, square club face. And then you got Dustin Johnson on the left. His grip is not really that strong. But his wrist is really bowed, and that's why that club face looks so close with that. But it's important. I mean, that's what I first thing I look at out there, because face and path are sort of the king of what you're doing. And then shaft line at the top, Tiger on plane. Steve Stricker, you can see he's across the line. Corey Pavin laid off. Okay, so as I said before, it tells you where to go. Arm plane at the top. This is DeChambeau when he was before the workout regimen, when he was doing one plane stuff with Mike Shy. And you can see that his arm plane is on his shoulder. Keegan Bradley, arm plane above his shoulder. A lot of lower body action coming down. Ben Hogan, arms below his shoulder. A lot of rotation going through the ball. Less slide. He had some shift, but he had less slide. He had more rotation. Here's looking at distance. There's Nelly Korda parallel, John Rahm short of parallel, John Daly past parallel.
Yep.
And so, you know, that's what I'm looking at for determining if they have enough motion. And then the sequence of the downswing. There's Sergio lagging the club, a lot of distance, flat-footed lag. And then on the right is Jay Day, with his old swing, used to release it really early, and then he had to swing really hard, and that's where he hurt his back. So his work with Chris Como was a lot better. And then looking at divots, you look at the direction of the divot should be straight to left. If you're hitting down, your swing direction is going to be a little bit left. You look at how deep it is, determines different things, the shape of it, whether it's toed out or whether it's square to square, and the location, is it after impact or before impact? And then finally, you look at the setup, aim, posture, position, grip. You can see Freddie Couples playing the third hole at Augusta. He's aimed way left over in those bunkers, hitting an iron. And then Sam Snead, you can see his caddy he's aiming at. He's aiming way right, and then comes over and pulls the ball right toward the target every time. And so that's sort of the process that I go through when I do that. And then I give my lesson based on the principles. And then when I do my teaching, I have 3 places to make changes. One is in the setup. So for instance, we're talking about the club face position. So let's say the open club face, I can do it with the grip. I can do it in the backswing with the wrist action, or I can do it in the downswing with the release of the hands and the hand action, how it is. And then I give them 3 ways that I can teach them. I can tell them, I can show them, or I can let them feel it through use of drills and aids and things like that. At the end of the lesson, I ask for feedback, and that's nothing more than saying, what did we learn today? And then that gives you a chance to clear up any misconceptions that you might have. And then I give them self-correcting information. Okay, you were slicing it, you strengthen your grip, they got the ball to go left, so then you learn to swing out to keep the ball from going too far left. So if you see the ball going left, don't weaken your grip, swing more to the right, swing out on it more. And if you're giving practice assignments, okay, I want you to hit, start off each day by making half swing punch shots. This is going to be able to get you what I need. And then just from that half swing punch shot, just grow your swing a little bit longer, a little bit further. And then give playing assignments. So what I want you to do, I want you to make 2 practice swings when you're playing with your feet closed, trying to get the feeling of what we're trying to do with that path. And then once you get up there, just try to react to the target. And then I'd like to see you next week at 2 o'clock, if that's okay. And that's sort of how I give a lesson. I ran over, but not much. That's quick.